In 1987, the World Touring Car Championship was run alongside the European Touring Car Championship, with both championships using the Group A rule set. There were several top entries, including the Eggenberger Motorsport team using the Ford Sierra Cosworth alongside Andy Rouser's team, and of course you had the iconic BMW M3, which was run by Schnitzer Motorsport, and the Italian CBM and Bugatti teams. The calendar was expanded to races in Australia, New Zealand and Japan. The BMW driver Roberto Ravaglia won the championship, however the season itself was a disaster. It immediately began in controversy as the works Fords were disqualified from the season open in Monza after they have changed electronics from Weber to Bosch, which clashed with the homologation papers. The BMWs would also be disqualified because of illegal boot lids and due to roofs being made of thin metal. In Bathurst, the Ford Sierras were once again disqualified after modifications to their rear wheel arches costed them a safe victory. After that, the World Championship was cancelled after that year, with the European Championship shutting down after 1988 due to rising costs. And so, the regional championships remained. The rise in popularity of the Super Touring rules, introduced in 1991, saw the FIA host a one-round World Cup event from 1993 up until 1995, which saw multiple top-class drivers and manufacturers enter these events. Paul Radicic won the 1993 and 1994 events with a Ford Mondeo in Monza and Donington, whilst Frank Biela won the 1995 event in Paul Ricard with his Audi A4 Quattro. In 1996, the FIA would shift their focus to the DTM, which was on its way to become an international series. But ultimately, escalating costs saw the end of the series after that year, and so there was once again no proper World Championship for touring cars. This would all change in the new millennium. And with that, let's go through the road towards the reformation of the World Touring Car Championship in 2005. By 1997, the Super Touring era was still going strong. The WTCC was generating a lot of hype. The German Super Touringwagen Cup has become the filler series for the dead ITC series, and many other local series have seen some impressive grids. But in the middle of it, the first problems began to rise. Costs. A new Super Touring car is now worth around 250,000 euros, excluding all the telemetry work and stuff from top teams. And so, over the next few years, the grids began to suffer. After 1997, the Belgian Pro Car Series and the Spanish Touring Car Championship have ditched the Super Touring Car rules, and by 1999, more and more series were leaving the rules behind. And also during the time, many works teams are starting to leave. BMW have withdrawn their works engagement after 1998, leaving the Italian teams fighting it out in aging 320i's. Peugeot would also shut down their works teams, and so was Audi. And of course, we shouldn't forget Mazda and Toyota, who also left. And after 1999, more manufacturers quit, like Renault, Nissan and Volvo. As a result, the grids were mostly filled by amateurs who had no chance against the remaining top teams, and who were causing a lot of trouble on track. The Italian Superturismo Championship, once a series remembered by the fierce battles between the Audis, the BMWs and the Alphas, now only consisted of 4 non-pro entries, even though BMW was not fully involved anymore. And because of a lot of issues from the 1998 series, including poor TV coverage, only 8 more privateers would show up, occasionally leaving only 10 cars in total for several rounds. In the end, Fabrizio Giovinardi, driving for the Alfa Nord Auto team, won the championship ahead of Emanuele Naspetti, who was driving for the CBM team, using their trusted BMW 320i. In 1999, the German Super Touringwagen Cup visited the Misano World Circuit for round 5 of the championship. Alongside the usual suspects, the Alfa Nord Auto team also took part as a guest entry, with Guido Luschetti Zigarini also joining in. Those were the first signs that these series could potentially work together from 2000 onwards, seeing as they couldn't survive another year as a standalone series. And this would later become the reality, as the Italian Superturismo and a few remaining teams of the Supertourenwagen Cup would merge together and would rebrand themselves as the European Supertouring Cup. Originally planned as a joint venture between the Italian Superturismo and the German Supertourenwagen Cup, the promoters from the German series quickly pulled out after Opel and the Abt Sportsline team were not interested in fielding cars for their planned Euro STW, and so the Italians had to run this series alone. The initial season of the European Supertouring Cup would consist of 6 races in Italy and 4 races who are outside of Italy, with a race in Austria at their A1 ring, Hungary at their Hungaroring ring, the Czech Republic with a race in Brno, and Slovenia using a former military ground in Mobicroc as a temporary circuit. The field would mostly consist of the teams and drivers in the 1999 Italian Superturismo, so the likes of Giovinazzi, Nicola Larini, Emanuele Naspetti, Roberto Colciago, and some amateurs like Gianluca Roda and Guido Lucetti would return. From the German Championship, only Andrei Studenik, Oliver Meyer and Heinrich Szymanczyk would occasionally join the races, whilst the Yas engineering team would actually compete throughout the entire season with a single car entered by the Dutchman Peter Cox. The inaugural season would see a title fight between Cox and Giovinazzi. Whilst the Honda Accord was overall the fastest package, it also had its share of problems, especially at starts and in terms of luck, as Cox would lose crucial points early on in the season to Giovinazzi. Another disadvantage was that Cox had to fight on his own, as he was left to fight against the 3 Alfa 156 from the Nord Auto team. The CBM team would suffer throughout the season with their aging car. Infrio Morbidelli and Naspetti would occasionally fight for wins on some circuits like the Hungaroring, Misano and Mobicroc. Still, Gianni Morbidelli would have a superb season, finishing the season in 3rd overall. As for the rest, only Roberto Colciago in his Audi A4 would occasionally challenge for podiums and wins, as Colciago would score 5 wins but would suffer from several reliability issues and would therefore not challenge for a title. The championship would be ultimately decided in the season finale in Slovenia, as during a chaotic first race, Giovinazzi would finish in 4th, and with Cox only finishing the race in 9th, Fabrizio Giovinazzi became the first ever Euro STC champion and would continue his title-winning streak. Overall, the first season felt more like a continuation of the Italian Championship, just with some more European tracks on the calendar. Except for Peter Cox, no other team coming from outside the Italian Championship was able to be a noticeable figure, and were mostly field fillers. And even though it has got the backing of Eurosport as a TV partner, the series was not really popular. No one really talked about it, and it just existed. Noteworthy moments where the crowd was particularly empty was at the Hungaroring. Even though the FIA GT Championship was there, the spectators for the Euro STC race were very small indeed. But regardless, the series would become an FIA Championship from 2001 onwards and would see some major changes to make touring car racing more popular again. For 2001, the Eurosport Super Racing Weekend was formed. The entire weekend includes the FIA GT Championship, the Formula Renault, and the Euro STC Championship. New to the fold was the Euro SPC Championship, using the Super Production rule set, which were using even simpler racing cars on a cheaper budget. In the Super Touring Championship, the Alfa Nord Auto team were once again the favourites, going into the season with 3 main cars, once again being driven by Giovinazzi, Larini, and the only female driver on the grid, Romana Bernardoni. The main challengers were once again Honda, due to their amazing aero package. The Jazz engineering team were now fully focused on the European Championship, as the BTCC have made their switch to the BTCT rules in 2001. They were going into the season with Gabriele Tarquini as their main driver, and alongside him, former F3000 racer Fabrice Walfisch would join him in the second car. Other noteworthy entries were the AGS Motorsport team, fielding 2 Audi A4 Quattros with Roberto Colciago and Max Pigoli. British touring car ace Matt Neal would join the series mid-season after he left the BTCC after the first race in the privateer Nissan, once again being managed by Team Dynamics. Unlike last season, there's also an amateur championship, which was ultimately won by Sandro Sardelli, who moved to a privately run Nissan Primera from Pro Motorsports. Just like last season, the battle for the championship was between Alfa Romeo and Honda. Whilst Tarquini won the most number of races in his Accord, he was also involved in several accidents, either on his own or with some help from others. One noteworthy accident was in Monza, where he threw his car into a wall in race 1, immediately losing some important points to the championship. Unlike Tarquini, the Alfa drivers were scoring points at a consistent rate, as between both drivers they only had 1 retirement each throughout the entire season, comparing to Tarquini's 4 retirements. Alongside the main contenders, only Roberto Colciago in his Audi and Wildfish were able to occasionally win races up until the final 2 weekends. From Route 9 onwards, Honda and Alfa sent in some wildcard entries to help with their respective title charge. For Honda, James Thompson would climb into a 3rd Accord, and as for Alfa, they hired Felipe Massa to their 4th car and even replaced Bernardoni with touring car ace Yvon Muller at the season finale in Estoril. But at the end, it was once again Fabrizio Giovanardi who became champion, as Tarquini has lost way too many points in the season and was ultimately taken out by Larini in the final race. Yvon Muller and Matt Neal were the final winners of the Super Touring Car era, as the Super Touring Car rules were not used after that season. And as for the Super Production Championship, the season was dominated by the Dutchmen Peter Cox and Duncan Huisman, both driven for BMW. And let's just say they're not particularly good friends. Cox and Huisman would share the most amount of race wins and would have some hard battles throughout the year. Only Norman Simon, Tommy Rustad and Gianni Morbidelli would win some races outside of the dominant forces. But the season would end in scandalous fashion. After a safety car restart, Cox just took Duncan Huisman out of the race and therefore became the Euro STC champion by 3 points, even though he was disqualified from the race. For 2002, there were some necessary changes made to further strengthen the touring car scene. First, there was only one championship for touring cars, rebranded as the European Touring Car Championship, or in short ETCC. Next, the FIA would implement a new rule set. Seeing as the Super Touring cars had no future anymore due to exploding costs, the Super 2000 rules were introduced. These rules were based on the production rules, but it allowed some more freedom in terms of the engine, suspension, aerodynamics, etc. Overall, these rules were introduced to reduce the budget required to run these cars. For its initial season, the grid was already strong. The Alfa Nord Auto team, now rebranded as N-Dot Technology, would once again run 3 cars with defending champion Giovanardi, Larini and Bernardoni driving their Alfa Romeo 156 GTA. BMW would also compete with their 320i and with multiple drivers like Jordi Gene, Fabrizio De Simone, driving for BMW Team Spain, Jörg and Dirk Müller, driving for BMW Team Deutschland, and several more non-full-time entries like Tom Coronel or Euro STC champion Peter Cox. Volvo would also run a works program with the help of ProDrive, using the Volvo S60 as their base, and they would go into the season with Rickard Rydell and James Hansen as their drivers. Other cars like the Nissan Primera and the Honda Civic Type R would also appear throughout the season, but wouldn't challenge the frontrunners. In fact, neither BMW or Volvo would challenge for wins in the early part of the season, as the Alfa Romeo 156 GTA was the class of the field, with Giovanardi and Larini winning the first 9 races, with Fabrizio securing 6 wins and Nicola just 3. By the midpoint of the season, the FIA have changed the rules to stop the Alfa domination. The front-wheel drive cars had to carry 15 kg extra weight, whilst the rear-wheel drive cars could race with 15 kg less than before. And so it was Jörg Müller who was the first non-Alfa to win a race, taking the checkered flag in race 2 in Anderstorp. Until the end of the season, the Müllers would win 6 more races, both winning 3 races each, but it was too late to stop the Alfas winning the championship, as once again Giovanardi won the title with a massive 29 points gap to Jörg Müller, who became a vice champion. The Volvos were not able to properly challenge the top cars, as even though Rickard Riedel would occasionally visit the podium, he would not win a single race that season, and sadly, Volvo would pull out the championship after that year already. But thankfully for 2003, Seat would join the series with a full works entry. Speaking of 2003, it would see some serious changes in the driver front. Fabrizio Giovanardi, who won championships from 1997 onwards for Alfa Romeo, would ultimately leave them and join BMW instead, partnering up with Antonio Garcia at Travaglia Motorsport. Alongside them, Andy Priaulx would race for Racing Bart Mampei, running under the Great Britain banner, and furthermore, Team Schnitzer would also bring in 2 more works cars, once again being driven by Jörg and Dirk Müller. Thankfully for Alfa, they have signed a strong replacement for Giovanardi. Alongside Arini, who remained with the team, Gabriele Tarquini would be Giovanardi's replacement, and instead of Romano Bernardoni, who underperformed during their past 3 seasons, Roberto Colciago will replace her, coming in with 2 championships in the Swedish Touring Car Championships with an Audi A4 Quattro. For Seat, Jordi Gené and Frank Diefenbacher would drive the brand new Seat Toledo Cupras in their first full-time season. Unlike last year, there was also an Independence Championship consisting of drivers like Duncan Huisman and Tom Coronel, driving BMW 320i's entered by Kali Motors, ALT Engineering entering a year-old Volvo S60, once again being driven by Rickard Riedel and Sandro Sardelli, the winner of the 2001 Independence Cup. Giovanardi's switch to BMW was not successful, as he would fail to win a single race during that year, ultimately finishing this season in 9th overall. The Seat Toledos would have a tough debut year, but would still claim some success in the form of a podium finish from Frank Diefenbacher in Oschersleben. Oh yeah, and the Privateer Volvos were also there, but thanks to Riedel, the car would see 2 more podiums throughout the year. This season also saw the racing comeback of Alessandro Zanardi, who made his first appearance in a race car since the massive crash in 2001 at the Lausitzring. We just discount the demo run at Lausitzring 2003. The Privateer Championship was won by Duncan Huisman, who won the Privateer class 10 times this year, ultimately finishing 31 points ahead of Tom Coronel, so overall it was a successful year for Kali Motors. As for the overall championship, the season saw a battle between the returning Tarquini, Jörg Müller, Nicola Larini and Andy Priaulx. The battle would go until the final race of the season, when even their respective teammates became involved. Surely we cannot forget Roberto Colciago turning into a terrorist when turning Dirk Müller around in the first race in Monza, whilst Jörg would suffer a tyre failure late in the race, retiring near the end of it as well. Tarquini meanwhile would commit further terrorism on race 2, sending poor Huisman into Andy Priaulx, who spun as a result and therefore had no chance of winning the title. And because Tarquini finished the race in 3rd place, Jörg Müller's win was not enough and Gabriele won the title. Even though another Alfa Romeo driver won the title, everyone knew that BMW was coming for them, and oh boy would they deliver. For 2004, the series would expand to the United Arab Emirates, as the season finale took place at Dubai. That means that the race in Anderstorp was cut for this season. As for the drivers, Giovanardi would move back to Alfa Romeo after his miserable time at BMW being replaced by Alessandro Zanardi full-time. 2 more Seat Toledos would appear, being driven by Gianni Morbidelli and Rickard Riedel, and there were more manufacturers entering the series, with Peugeot, Honda and Ford all appearing throughout selected races this season. This season was another success, as the title fight between Priaulx, Dirk Müller and Tarquini defined the season. Whilst the Alphas started the season strong, the BMWs would have a superb mid-season stint, winning 9 out of the 10 races between race 5 and 14. Ultimately, a crash in Oschersleben would be a huge disadvantage for Tarquini in the championship, as even though he would go on to win the final 2 races in Dubai, he would still finish the season in 3rd overall. The title was decided on a tiebreaker, as both Andy Priaulx and Dirk Müller would end up with 111 points, but because Andy has secured 5 wins in comparison to Dirk's 3, Andy Priaulx was crowned the 2004 European Touring Car Champion. The Seats once again were not fully able to regularly challenge for wins or podiums. Regardless, Ricard Rideau gave the Spanish outfit their first win in Oschersleben, showing that there was still some potential left on the table for future seasons. As for the Privateers Trophy, Tom Coronel easily took the championship, even though he missed the final race in Dubai, 34 points ahead of Italian Salvatore Tavano. This would ultimately be the final ETCC season, before being granted the World Championship status from the FIA from 2005 onwards. From a series full of used and older spec super touring cars to a very popular touring car series, the ambitions of the Italians paid off massively, revitalizing touring car racing around the globe, giving it another big push it so desperately needed after the end of the popular super touring rules. In the future, we will take a look at the World Touring Car Championship from 2005 onwards, so stay tuned. But for now, thank you for watching, and until next time, goodbye.